Stream is live. Welcome to show, Chaitin Maycott. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm sure you have. Looks like there's sun out there in St. Pete, Florida.
Oh yeah, it's always sun.
Oh
Bam!
wow,
Right
wow,
to a little palm
man.
tree.
I'm envious. I'm here close to Buffalo in Niagara Falls on the Canadian side,
Yep.
and it's perfectly dark and gloomy outside.
Yeah, I don't know why you do it to yourself. I don't know why anyone does it to themselves. Like, you don't need to
Yeah.
go to Miami. That's really south. But here is like a perfect right in between.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I've been there. But yeah, thanks for taking the time out. I really appreciate it. Chaitin's founder at Demolition Marketing Leads. He's focusing on this very specific niche that we're going to talk to him about. But Chaitin, welcome to the show. Do you want to give a brief introduction about who you are and what you're doing these days?
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you guys for having me on the podcast. Super excited to be here. So yeah, these days what we're doing is working exclusively with demolition companies, hence demolitionmarketingleads.com. Probably the laziest way to get good SEO, frankly. Some demolition companies are very old school and antiquated. It's like a old boys club. You know, you think of guys on like a tractor, an excavator with overalls, the cigarette out his mouth, and that's some of them. But the ones that we like working with the most are the ones that, you know, they could be in a suit and tie. You don't really think of demolition with a suit and tie. You usually, again, think of that old school version. We seem to find that high ticket works well. I started a generalist agency in 2017 called Results Magnet. And for me, I came to find out I really liked selling results. I liked selling tangible, trackable things that could make a company scale. And when we would take in thousands of dollars a month from a company, I didn't want to say, oh, thanks, we made your website look a little prettier. Or we changed the color on your logo because people will resonate better with it. You know, I guess we weren't spoiled enough to work with massive companies when I started back in the day that could just throw money at what I feel is kind of cute to have, but not necessary to have. So yeah, my mind got very focused on SEO, so search engine optimization, pay per click. And recently we've invited two things pretty close into the business, which is first party website pixel traffic data. So essentially what we can do with a company that we've partnered with on that is for our own site as well as for our client site, we can scrape anywhere. This is going to be a large range of numbers, but like 20 to 40% of users that can come in. We, of course, have to put cookies disclosures and have to make it legal and above board. But most people just click allow anyway. As long as they click that, we're allowed to scrape about 20 to 40% of their data, which is first party. So we're getting names, we're getting emails, we're getting phone numbers, that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Which is great. It's good for retargeting, for advertising and building a list. They don't need to call or they don't need to form fill email. So for us plus our clients, that's very valuable. And we're not working with roofers, but if we were, those people could technically grab those scrape lists. And of course, we can use it from an advertising perspective. But additionally, they can simply call those numbers or email those numbers directly or through a system. And they could just simply do a light touch, not be creepy, not call people while you're on, while they're on your website, but you can call them maybe 4 hours later, a day later, something of that nature. And in the example of a roofing company, for instance, because they have like a very salesy orientation, they can call up and just simply say, hey, Bob Lee, we buy data of people in our local area. We're happening to do free estimates in your neighborhood, or we're doing a roof near your house pretty soon here. Just wanted to reach out. We're blah, blah, blah Roofing Incorporated. We're your neighbors, in the city next door. Just want to reach out and see if you'd be open to a free estimate. Meanwhile, you're not going to reveal this, but they went on your website for how long, how many clicks they had. So that's a cool innovation. And the second innovation would be doing reignition campaigns. So something that you're fighting no matter what you do is time with clients. You want to get them results quickly. So we used to just focus on SEO, pay per click. We, of course, now have that pixeling going through. But one of our more recent things, similar to the pixel, to get quick results, is doing the reignition. So essentially requesting of our clients email lists, SMS, all those different data points, and ethically and responsibly being able to get them very quick referrals, repeat business, and potential reviews from people that they've worked with before who maybe haven't actively referred them or reviewed them even though they work together, or they have a project that they've totally forgot from 3 years ago with our client
Hmm.
on. They're going back to Google, which of course we're going to represent our client well on there, but we can also use that data that they've been sitting on, kind of a gold mine, to
A lot
re.
of these people are also commercial clients as well. So, and a lot of our clients that we're working with, they don't hit these people back unless they're friends with them and things like that. And, there's so many missed opportunities every time you do a database reactivation there. So, yeah, I think those are great ideas. So, when you with your first agency, was it like a generalist agency in your local market, or were you selling across the board into the United States?
Primarily, a lot of it would be in my own backyard when I lived in Atlanta. Just getting to know people, network, put your name out there, that kind of thing. The challenge would be definitely every client was a new client. Working with a lawyer versus an accountant. We even had a company that was e-commerce, but they also sold meat locally. So they were kind of a local farmer, and they were like, "Hey, we sell outside of our ranch, locally in our neighborhood, but we're looking to go e-commerce." So as you can imagine, like we have a lawyer, we have an accountant, we have this meat e-commerce, like all this craziness.
Yeah.
At a point, what I kind of baked into it, which still was being generalist, but I kind of said, "Hey, we want high ticket, preferably home services." Lawyers were fine, but they were also very difficult to work with. God forbid you give them a contract to sign to start working together. Being lawyers, they're going to look through that thing with a fine tooth comb and be difficult. And you'll be like, "Hey, man, like I work with another lawyer client. He helped me write this up." Like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that lawyer stinks." It's like, all right, do you want to do marketing or not? Like, don't
Hmm.
kill me on the contract. So, yeah, it kind of came out to be that high ticket service based, and then we further found out home service based. So it's a lot of kind of testing, and I started that business in 2017. And then what I eventually realized is like, man, we're trying to be everything to everyone. We're
Hmm.
constantly figuring out from like we can help anyone with anything on the computer to let's focus on results with SEO and PPC to let's do high ticket doing SEO and PPC to being like, all right, home services like roofers, foundation repair, demolition, those sorts of things really, really resonated.
Hmm.
And at a point, like you get to, hey, we can keep the generalist agency, which I still have Results Magnet and we still serve clients through that. But I need to focus on attracting, like I can keep the money coming in through this generalist thing, but I would say for the audience to focus on being able to go outbound and attract a particular group of people.
Hmm.
I still recommend high ticket. I
Hmm.
give so much credit to the people who do the restaurants or who do the lower. I really do. Like, uh, we know of an agency that works with like karate studios, and she's so funny because she's like, these people have no money. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I give you so much credit that you're able to be successful in that niche. But for me, I couldn't imagine how successful some of these people would be if their niche just so happened to be mid to higher ticket. These people would be worth many millions more than they already are worth. So credit to them. But
Hmm.
I think the secret there I'm about to say is niche is really important. However, that holds a lot of people back. So do something. Being a millionaire is fantastic. You don't have to be a gazillionaire. So, choose something, commit to it, my preference is ideally, just so it has longer and easier legs, ideally it is mid to high ticket, because at least that way you can tell your clients, hey, we make you way more money than what we charge you, versus
Mm.
having to be like, hey, did we even help them break even for the last 6 months? I don't like, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. I give people a lot of credit who sell to low ticket, because they're clearly fantastic salespeople and great at managing accounts. For me, I try to treat business like as easy as possible.
So you're focusing on the bit of a bigger recurring revenue
Mhm.
client, and I feel that's a great strategy, and I totally agree with you that niche is the way to go, especially like maybe you want to grow to $10 million, and maybe that niche might not be enough for you, but to get to that point, you're gonna have to get to the $1 million, maybe a couple $1 million within that particular niche, and then when you get to those walls, maybe that's the point when you go into a separate niche. And I've seen agencies do that successfully, operating in multiple niches and things like that. But until you get to that point, I feel stay in your lane. It's a
Right.
lot easier to like having that impact creating activity like we were talking about, Chaitin. That it's just a lot easier if I just have to do this one thing. I'm going to do a stuff thing. Yeah, I know, but like I've seen people build out, like I'm not a big fan of cold outreach just as the sole breadwinner on the lead side. But if
Mm.
that's the only option you have, then there's a way of doing it, and like you go all in, and you do it really really well using high level in the back end and all of that cool stuff, and you guys are just hitting the numbers every single day diligently. That's the way to do it. So that having a niche allows you to do those activities. If you're not a niche focused, then now that's going to be just dispersed into a
Mm.
like shower that's clogged up, right? So we all know that's not pretty. All right, so that's great, man. So now you kind of figured out the niche, and you're now, even out of these niches that you pointed out, you're really focused on the demolition side more. What's the reason there? Like, because I know that demolition group, I have a friend in Calgary who does demolition, and I know this is a small group of people who do that. So there might not be too many in the US to start out with. So what made you pick this like specific niche?
Yeah, frankly, it was, and this sounds crazy, I've never been fired by a demolition client ever. And it's been years that we've been working in the space. It just was that we never fully committed, because I was still kind of like, oh, generalist agency, like we could make $1 billion one day helping everyone online. And over the last few quarters, I dialed in and said, hey, demolition, this is special. Like, I'm sure you've experienced it as you guys have come up through your business. Getting fired is a part of it. Like, I laugh at my friends and family and, romantic interests and stuff where they're like, oh, I might get fired, or I have to quit my job, or I did get fired. I'm like, yeah, I've been fired many times, for many different reasons. It's not always our fault. Companies get bought out, and my client's like, hey, thanks. You killed it so much for us. We sold the company. I'm like, great. Yeah. So we're going to get the contract with the new buyer, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, about that. And you're like, man, come on, like, and you're not going to even give me any love now that you sold the company and made all this money. I don't get any
Yeah.
love. I just get kicked to the curb. I lose the contract. So yeah, when you get like kicked in the teeth enough, you kind of look at things. And for me, my clarity was, hey, we've worked with a number of demolition companies, not one or two. We had toyed with, and we still have a little bit of this, but we had toyed with exclusivity. And
Hmm.
it's a really great blessing, but also a curse that we've experienced, where we have not been fired by clients, but we have fired clients when we do have that exclusivity approach, which we no longer offer that. It's so funny because I'd never been fired in this world, and I'd been able to do the firing for once and for all, and do it to go to a higher paying, higher caliber company each time we've had to do that for the
Hmm.
exclusivity. So that was like, oh man, there's something here. Like that blew my mind. Another beauty is that it's not working with realtors. It's not working with, chiropractors or dentists where everyone, you can go Google SMMA, Ty Lopez, SMMA, probably even like, I don't know, Andrew Tate, SMA, and they'd be like, you got to get with chiros and dentists and, all this stuff, lawyers. And I'm like, again, I mentioned this earlier, I'm too much of a scaredy cat in business that I want to get rich for sure. I don't want to maybe get rich. And to me, I would think I would have to either try to give a better offer than everyone else in those competitive niches, which many of them have good offers if they're still around. I would have to compete on price, which is never a good thing to have to do. So I really looked at it and I said, man, legitimately, I'll give you an example. A very close buddy of mine, he's an estimator in the demolition world. So he's essentially a salesman at demolition companies. Found out last year that we brought to him about $3 million worth of deals that they actually closed. One guy at one company just last year alone. And the funny thing is he wasn't able to take a lot of the deals because where he was working, they kind of restrained him from what types of deals he was able to accept. So if he had a total free for all and the company that he was working for was able to fulfill all the work, to be dead honest with you, he might have done $9 million in contracts. So, come on, you can't talk about that with so many of these niches. It's not even doable. Again, I give a lot of these people credit because they actually chose a niche and they stuck to it, which frankly, they're more successful than I am because that is what they did and they did it years ago. As for me, I got into this world years ago, but I only committed within the last few quarters. But yeah, man, it's a fun niche at this point. I'm not really concerned if someone, and there are people probably in it. I haven't found anyone who does demolition specific, but if there is, it's okay because we're, with the help of your team, we're building a brand equity. So I can say, hey, you know what? Like we have the #1 podcast in the space. I have.
You had 20 top tier demolition companies already, and you just started your podcast, right? When did you launch the podcast?
The end of December. We've been going hard. It's only
nice, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. And your podcast strategy is amazing. I love the podcast strategy. Do you mind explaining the strategy that you're running on your podcast?
Yeah, sure. I think podcasts are just sexy, for lack of a better word. We are able to penetrate conversations so much more simply. The two ways I look at it is you can use it simultaneously. You should probably go after prospects with the podcast approach. But a hidden thing that I think a lot of people don't dive deep enough into is going after vendors with the podcast approach. I have looked at referrals and one-to-many sales being much more valuable than the one-to-one. And what I mean by that is, let's say you do a podcast with someone, they're much more apt to say yes than a sales call. They're much more apt to show up to the appointment rather than what sales calls. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll be there, whatever. And they don't show up because it's another sales call. But you can utilize that content, whether they say yes or no. So let's say it's the prospect end and you approach it at the beginning and the end of the podcast and kind of like prime them up in the podcast, let them speak, let them be spotlighted. You can kind of touch on some things about what you do, but it should really be about them. At the end of the podcast, you can either approach them straight up and be like, hey, that was great. You're a natural. You did amazing. I do want to let you know, you'd mentioned like it's kind of tough to build a pipeline or sometimes you guys aren't as busy as you'd like to be. I didn't even think about this, but during the call, one of my team members did a report on your website and I wanted to show you maybe why your pipeline isn't as busy as you'd like it to be. It can be a little awkward. You don't want someone feeling like you're baiting and switching them. So that's an approach and that may lead to an opportunity. And if it doesn't, if they say, hey, thanks, but no thank, like whatever. You're like, hey, not a problem. All is good. We're going to give you some SEO backlinks. We're going to give you the YouTube shout out. Your video will be posted. That's cool. If they don't want to work with you, that's fine, because you have the content that can now attract people who may want to work with you.
Yeah, and I think the more you start doing them, the more, you're going to be getting a lot of views. So it's a benefit for them to be on your show as well. And I've seen that, there's always something positive that comes out of having your dream 100 clients coming to your podcast. And you can have multiple dream lists, like you said, that you can have a list of maybe JV partners that you want to bring to the call, and then you want to have the top tier clients within your niche that you want to invite to your call. But it's a great opportunity to have that conversation one on one with them, and letting them know that, hey, we're here. If you're struggling, this is what we specialize in. Would love to send you an estimate. Just come from a position of authority, because you are already in a position of authority. When you're sitting down with them, they're coming to you to be interviewed, and you're the interviewing person, expert in the field. So yeah, that's a great strategy, man. Congratulations on the speed that you picked it up with. I think it's just going to be home runs around the corner on that. Is like, you guys done 20 episodes, right? You guys are also chopping it up and posting it on socials and all of the shebang.
Yeah, it's great. I'll give a little insight there. We use Opus it uses AI to do shorts. I have heard of Riverside as well, where people are able to do that pretty easily. But at first, before I knew of either Opus or Riverside, I was like, oh yeah, this will be easy. They like chop up the long, and then magically my team will find short golden nuggets throughout it. And I thought, because I also am good at video editing, I was like, yeah, it'll take a little time, but it's doable. However, with the volume of podcasts that we have and the volume of shorts that we're putting out, that's not realistic. So as a quick insight for the audience, what we do is we film the podcast. We hope and pray that I don't mess up or that the guest doesn't mess up. If they do, the system is just telling my team, here's the podcast we just filmed. They know where the file is going to be once it downloads from Google Meet. 5 minutes in, I might have said something, that didn't make sense, or the guests, they needed to catch their breath or something. So I'll say, hey, take a little look at that 5 minutes in, chop that little bit out, get the rest of the file, put in our intro, put in our outro. Now you have the full thing. Go throw that into Opus, which then gives us roughly 20 shorts. We do have to kind of work on those a little bit in the Opus platform itself to perfect them. But yeah, I would say, one podcast takes one of my team members who's pretty good at the process now, maybe 45 minutes to an hour per episode, but we get a full long out of that, and we get usually about 20 shorts. So it's, for an hour an episode. And the fact is too, we get the relationship from having that interview. It's awesome. And
That's the biggest thing, right? Because maybe even that conversation doesn't go anywhere, but those 20 shorts that you're going to be posting over the course of next 1 month maybe is going to be a reminder to that person. Oh yeah, I had a chat with Chaitin. Yeah, man, this guy's amazing, right? He's giving me shout outs, and he's making me look good, right? So you just can't go wrong with that. Like, if you're doing cold strategy and you're not doing something like what Chaitin is doing right now, I think, it's tough out there. So this is the easy way of doing cold, and it's amazing. I really admire the strategy that you have. Tell me a little bit about the size of your team. How many people do you have, and what roles are you hiring for right now?
Yeah, so currently we have 3 people, 4 including myself. Of course, I'm kind of overall, and that is the face of everything. That is hosting the podcasts. That's managing the accounts. That's making sure that we have 2 other hires amongst that 4, including myself. Those 2 hires, one is focused on cold calling and cold outreach. In a way, he's kind of our podcast booker. Instead of him having direct sales, we kind of operationalized it and said, for him to be as successful as possible, to get the most yeses and the most show ups from those yeses, instead of him just cold calling, feeling
Mm,
like he'll burn out, let's just have him as the podcast booker. And he's been plenty
that's a
busy. And
fantastic idea, man.
yeah.
If you're gonna do cold outreach, that's why I said that Chaitin's method is the best right now, because this is the easiest way. Like, like you can really now and start when you're talking to these people. Obviously, that person is growing in the knowledge base and all of that stuff. It's just becoming easier and easier,
Mhm.
and you're building these, turning them into warm leads by the time they're done with the podcast with you. And there's just so much, and like I know people who've tried cold outreach, and except for one agency that did really well, I was telling you about,
Mhm.
it's very hard to see success out of this. But the way you're doing it, how many is this appointment setter booking for you right now as on guest side?
Yeah, typically, there are some days that he strikes out, and that's fine because he's still getting our name out there. But I would say on average, 1 to 3 appointments a day is kind of a standard, and that bakes in the days that he's just spending his time getting the name out there and talking to front end staff, and it just not going anywhere. But yeah, I would say 1 to 3 appointments per day is kind of standard. And the show rates too, I think that's a big point. The show rates, because we're kind of illuminating that person, we're not taking from them, we're giving to them.
Mm,
Show rates are probably 80+%.
nice,
If they don't
nice.
show up on the first episode, like frankly, my people, some of them they're in demolition, let's be honest, like they're not IT specialists that go on Zoom every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they don't show up on the first meeting, we typically can reschedule them, and they'll have a technical problem or they got stuck on a job site. But we do typically see at like an 80%.
And what kind of list are you targeting, Chaitin? Is this like any type of demolition business or a particular type?
Yeah, I mean, similar to how you reference a Dream 100, we have like a Dream 2000. Um,
Hmm.
the beauty is, like, in the demolition world, from our data, there's roughly 5,000 companies in the country that
Hmm.
do demolition. That's their like core focus. The thing is, we focus on them having a certain number of years in business, a certain revenue, a certain head count, employee count. Um, and because it's only 2,000, it's a blessing as well as, I guess, a curse to some people. But it's really nice because it's just like doing part two of niching. So niching says, okay, demolition is the focal point. What's better than that to me is saying, all right, now it's just 2,000. It's not
Hmm.
20,000 or 200,000. Like, you can do
Hmm.
with real estate as your niche, or you can do with chiropractors. With this,
Hmm.
there is no excuse, especially the fact that we have a team. It doesn't just rely on me. There is no excuse that we cannot directly reach out to 2,000 contacts.
Hmm.
And I'm talking like in a very personal way within 4 to 6 months.
Hmm.
And that can include phone calls, direct messages on social media, cold email, ringless voicemails. Like, if you can't,
Loom videos, man, they're popular. Like doing it, like I tend to like even right now. If somebody records with something with my website on there, I'm just inclined to see like what is this guy talking about. Maybe I'm missing out on something, right? So that's important to a business owner that when if you're doing all of that stuff, yeah. And the fact that it's a limited group of people that are bound to know about you guys, with like once you guys are done with like uh, 2,000 people times, I don't know, like maybe you're doing roughly 10 activities per person. So
Mhm.
that's what 20,000 touch points that you're going to have to make over the next 6 months to a year.
Mhm.
And what's the closing ratio you're targeting with this list?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we're still kind of dialing it in some, but the thing is, when we get them on the phone, it is pretty high. That's the challenge. Is like, do you get them for a podcast? Do you get them for a sales call? We're still kind of dialing that in. The podcast thing is great. Like I said, our win with the podcast is that it's about an 80% show rate. And I
Hmm.
literally have only had one person who I was just like, hey, we're 3 minutes into the podcast. I appreciate your time. This just isn't a fit. He was the worst. Like, he was given one word answers. He didn't want to be on video. And I was just like, man, I appreciate you coming here, like showing up, but this isn't going to work. Yeah, he was brutal, but yeah, everyone else has been great. So like from a close rate in my mind for the podcast, about 80%, we're dialing in the sales aspect because in a challenging way, like I do have the ability to focus on brand. I know that we
Mm,
do absolutely crush it for demolition companies. Again, it's millions of dollars we're making them every year extra.
mm,
Of course, in certain cases, it's millions of dollars of profit. So it's not just millions in revenue, which sounds extra cool. But like real business owners say, hey, man, I don't care if you make me $20 million a year extra. If I only make 20,000 profit, which obviously wouldn't make sense.
yeah.
But for the sake of example, real business people go, that's great. You can make me millions more in top line revenue. But what do I keep of that? That number's very
Yeah, I
high
think
as
what you're building out, you probably made it a no-brainer for a demolition company
well.
to, look for any generalist agency now because, demolition marketing leads should be the only option if you want to work with the best. And I think that's what the results prove. And it's a no-brainer for any client because just the learning curve is a lot higher when you're working with a non-niche based agency. It might be the same price, might even be expensive in some cases. How have you kind of priced your services out? What's the medium price range approximately, Chaitin?
Yeah, the beauty with that is we now have clarity. When we had generalist agency, we didn't necessarily have a clarity. So now we know our margins and we have three buckets. So I've always believed in have a no-brainer bucket. And what I mean by that is our first bucket, all in, this is inclusive of ad spend, SEO, reignition, the pixel, all the stuff that we do. Um, a legitimate company should be able to approach this. If they can't, then it's not a fit. So our first bucket is $2,500 a month. And
Hmm.
again, this is all in retail price. This is not I need $2,500, then I need ad spend and
Hmm.
all that stuff. We want to be able to prove something. And with the niche that we're in, we're blessed that it's not lawyers. A lawyer would say I spend $2,500 a week, and that's just in ads. For us, we can do everything plus still make money to pay our bills internally off of that bucket. And then we go up with two more buckets in $2,500 a month increments. So we kind of have the condo, which is the 2,500. We have the single family house, which is 5,000, and then we have kind of the mansion, which is 7,500 a month. And what we do is we help place prospects in those buckets where if they say, hey, we only want a few projects extra a year, I don't think it's very ethical for us to sell them in the highest placed bucket if that's their
Hmm.
mission. So we can say, hey, full transparency, we have three different models of working together. You might be a better fit for the 5,000 a month or the 2,500 a month if that's how you want to operate. Our ideal clients say, hey, we're at this certain point. We want to scale to the moon, like we're a cryptocurrency, like we just want to go above and beyond. Cool. What we can do is we could start you where we think out of those three buckets makes the most sense. And then
Hmm.
we like to put in our contract, it's an automatic increase, an automatic ascension. This is probably good for your audience, but in marketing, I found it very challenging to ascend clients. You can
Hmm.
do fantastic work for them, and you could talk until you're blue in the face to remind them of how well you've done, and they still won't increase. So what I found is from the prospecting phase, say, hey, we want to work, even as a marketing company, we're allowed to be choosy. We want to work with companies who want to scale and who are willing to do what they need to do with employment and fulfillment of operations to be able to do that. So if you want to work with us, let's agree on one of these three buckets that I feel you fit with and you feel that you fit with, but we're going to have in the contract that we're going to auto ascend you in either 6 months or a year to the next bucket up. So
Hmm.
let's say you're kind of like a middle grade company, maybe the 2,500 makes sense. Let's agree that every 6 months from then on out, we're going to go up to the 7,500 eventually. Or maybe it's a year in between those buckets so that way your team has time to get the fulfillment right. We don't want to overwhelm you.
So you're
But
kind of working with clients who have a growth-oriented mindset, who are going to be growing. Because has this been an issue where maybe you're providing too many leads? Because I know
yeah.
this business it's a heavy business, right? Like for demolition, you need expensive equipment and you need the right type of manpower to do that. And if you get a big contract, it's going to mean lots of expenses. So some people may shy away from that, especially if they don't have experience. So like, how would you tackle that? Have you come across that problem?
What's beautiful is we say just cherry pick it. Um, Really, that's the nice thing is typically depends, of course, on the client and the location that they're in. But typically, we could see 50, 100, 150 unique opportunities every single month for our
Hmm.
clients. So what we tell them more or less is out of those, some of them, yes, are going to be people looking for a job. But guess what? You need people to fulfill at the higher level anyway. So like we're helping you, although you're looking for deals, that stuff needs to come anyway to help you fulfill more deals. Some of those calls are going to be spammy and things, but let's face it, out of 50, 100, or 150 a month, and it could scale up or down depending on the package and location. Yeah, by all means, they're going to find 20% of those are going to be freaking amazing, stellar deals.
Hmm.
Another 20% is going to be decent deals, and then some of the other stuff is going to be, we're not interested. It's not the right mentality of the customer, what have you. So yeah, they're able to cherry pick. That's the beauty is we give them so
Yeah.
many opportunities.
Yeah, I think it makes sense because I know I have a friend, a close friend in Calgary who runs a demo company. So I know the industry a bit. And I feel the most important thing, like, they, uh, at a very minimum, they need to be at your your baseline program, because they need to be able to build that brand out in their local cities that they're operating in, and they have to be out there. If they're not, these are expensive contracts, and if they're not on that marketing real estate, they're going to be missing out. So that bare minimum is not an option for anyone, and I feel that $2,500 for the amount of contracts that demo companies bring in, I feel that's nothing, right, to get you guys started. So I think it's a no-brainer, man. Congratulations for what you're building out, Chaitin. Um, Amazing work. You have a few people from RepStack. I know your team is building out 4 people and counting,
Mhm.
and yeah, all the good luck to the future, man. And thanks for sharing all the stuff that you shared today. This, I think, for people who are starting out, picking out their niches, and just getting going from converting their generalist agency to a niche based agency. Chad and I are also part of a mastermind group. So if you're part of that mastermind group at Seven Figure Agency, I hope it's okay that people reach out to you if they're on that same stage that you're in, Chaitin.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's really nice to see that you have calls every day. Even if they're podcasts, of course you work in the sales stuff, but I will tell you from someone who didn't have a system,
Hmm.
for my own pipeline, the total irony, we crush it for our clients, but for our own selves, it's the biggest thing about marketing. It's crazy. It is very, very nice to speak to a select market of people who are millionaires,
Yeah.
multimillionaires. In my world, in a lot of high ticket niches, that's the case. Whether it's podcast or sales calls, like it's getting you closer and closer and closer to having more clients and more sales calls. And
Yeah.
we'll end the podcast with you definitely referring that guy to come on the podcast. We'll bring him on the Demolition Success Secrets podcast.
That's
That would be
awesome, man. I'm gonna refer you to my friend, and yeah, you have at least one more guest there. And yeah, I appreciate your time, Chaitin. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Thank you guys for having